Hello, and welcome to Scarlet Tavern. Grab a drink, take a seat, and let's begin. Tonight, we dive deep into the dramatic courtroom showdown of the infamous Lizzie Borden trial in our part 2. Get ready for legal theatrics, jaw dropping testimonies, and a verdict that continues to stir debate to this day. This is Scarlet Tavern. All right. So, one thing I want to talk about before we get back into it is we have added a new feature to our website. If you go to www.dammediallc.com, that's DAMEDIALLC.com. If you click on the Scarlet Tavern tab, you will be able to see all the photos from everything we discuss in our podcasts. These are photos that we cannot put on social media due to them getting removed or being explicit. However, you must enter a password to see that section. The password is Scarlet Letter, SCARLETT space LETTER, and make sure you capitalize the first letter in both of them. Now, just a side note that if you do enter that part of the site, you do enter the password, you are doing so at your own risk. So please be aware of that when you are looking to view these photos, as we take no responsibility for any triggering or anything that happens from you viewing these photos. But all right.
I mean, half the fun is just seeing what happens, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so next week I am going to Gen Con.
Yeah.
Super exciting. My dad will actually be there Saturday.
What? Wait, what?
Yeah, they're buying day passes and going Saturday. Because it's
Yeah, we felt it was a good and necessary business expense.
Can I
so
come?
Sure.
it's only a 6-hour drive for you.
How much are tickets?
Like 80.
Yeah.
But like for us, it's an hour and 57-minute drive. So, but yeah. So anybody that is listening to this that is going to be at Gen Con, I will be running some games for World of Game Design. Come see me, come find me. You can ask for me at the booth, and they will tell you where I am. But yeah, I will have some goodies to give away while I'm there. But it's going to be a ton of fun. That will be next weekend. We will still have a episode coming out on that Friday. But yeah, so let's pick back up with the trial part for Lizzie Borden.
All right. So I'll pick up from the investigation, I think was where we left off. Right.
Yeah.
I believe we had already kind of established, found the bodies. Cops are kind of honing in now on.
Yeah, and they did such a stellar job throughout the whole investigation. I'm just so proud. So, yeah. So, let's jump right into it. Lizzie's initial answers to the police officer's questions were at times strange and contradictory. Initially, she reported hearing a groan or a scraping noise or a distress call before entering the house. 2 hours later, she told police she had heard nothing and entered the house not realizing that anything was wrong. When asked where her stepmother was, she recounted Abby receiving a note asking her to visit a sick friend. She also stated that she thought Abby had returned and asked if someone could go upstairs and look for her. Sullivan and a neighbor, Mrs. Churchill, were halfway up the stairs, their eyes level with the floor, when they looked into the guest room and saw Abby lying face down on the floor. Most of the officers who interviewed Lizzie reported that they disliked her attitude. Some said she was too calm and poised. Despite her behavior and changing alibis, she was not checked for bloodstains. Police did search her room, but it was a cursory inspection. At the trial, they admitted to not doing a proper search because Lizzie was not feeling well. They were subsequently criticized for their lack of diligence. So a couple things. Um, the one book that Amy and I've been reading is a breakdown of the whole trial, and it covers some of the investigation. And part of the reason why the officer felt like Lizzie was obtuse in her responses and being a little bit difficult was at one point where they asked about if they knew where her stepmother was. She never immediately answered them with that whole, well, she received a note. She basically not so politely told the police officer that that was not her mother, that her mother had died as a child, and kind of blew him off after that point. Um,
I mean, at this point, she is aware that Abby's dead, right? Her stepmother's dead, and they're not like they're not leading up to it.
well, I mean, supposedly, the she claims she never knew until everybody found the body, um, kind of thing, and yet others are saying, well, she knew the whole time, and that's why she never answered the way, answered directly and kind of twisted her answers and changed her alibi and story and all that stuff.
I mean, because if you're asking if a cop is, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, we already know that Lizzie has a very troubled relationship with stepmother. She's not aware that she's dead at this point, or that anybody in her household is alive, so to speak. I can kind of, I don't mean, again, a cop is asking me a question. I would very much just like, no, what? Why are you asking me about where my mother is? Or whatever you feel your status is with her. If a cop is asking me, I'm like, this is odd. Um, but if she's not aware of this, the circumstances yet, I can kind of see her being like, she's not my mother. I really wouldn't go too much into detail about that, but about my mother died when I was young. Yeah, I don't care.
Right.
I'd be the cop at the writing. I think I don't care about your familial, how you feel about this. Just answer the damn question. I can really see like that because he knows she's dead. The stepmother's dead. So, but if she's already, but if he already told her or something, then yeah, it looks kind of weird.
Yeah, and in regards to like searching that like the bedroom and stuff like that, um during the trial, and we'll cover it more, that there were multiple accounts where all the officers changed their story. One was, I never got to do a search of the bedroom where Lizzie was because I wasn't allowed in. The doctor wouldn't let me in. And then, well, yeah, we did get in, but they ushered us right back out as soon as we made entry into the room. And another one was like, "Oh yeah, well we got access to the room, and they never blocked us from looking at anything, and they were very helpful and cooperative." So take it for what it's worth in in regards to this particular statement, saying that it was more of a cursory than a full blown search. They do go back at the funeral when the family when the parents are on the way to the funeral. The police department and the chief of police takes it upon himself to use that as his time to thoroughly investigate the house.
When they're not there at the funeral?
Correct. Correct.
I
Correct.
mean, correct
And
me if
go ahead.
I've never actually had to do like a proper execute a search warrant before. Um, but I mean, I don't think there's anything stopping them from doing it. Is it in bad taste? Yeah, sure, I guess. I mean, who wants to come back from burying two of your family members and see a whole plethora of cops outside going in and out of your home, ripping apart your stuff? Caleb, I mean, do you got anything like I know you probably done some search warrants before.
Um, so, I mean, with the house is an active crime scene, even it is technically an active crime scene all the way up until the trial, depending on the filing of lawyers and district attorneys and stuff like that. Um, so, law enforcement has access to the house at any point in time that they wish. If they are doing everything the right way, which we know that they didn't, the family would not be allowed back in that house whatsoever, because then that obviously taints your crime scene and stuff like that. Um, the so just for everybody's knowledge, when we say a cursory inspection, basically what that is that is just a quick glance over the scene, making sure there's no obvious weapons, obvious uh, evidence that is for the crime, but it doesn't. A cursory investigation does not go in depth, so they did not toss the room. They did not look for letters. They didn't look for this and that. If it were me, so a cursory investigation is standard.
Right.
When you first get to a scene, you always do a cursory investigation on every room of the house, and then from looking at the crime scene, then you say, okay, here's our suspects, here's what we need. Now we need to dig further. I don't give a shit if she's sick. She can go be sick somewhere else.
Legit. 100%.
Yeah. So wait a
There,
minute.
she
So
can go to the fucking hospital.
yeah, she's home.
Yeah, she
She's
was in her
bed.
room
She's in her bedroom
with the
Dr.
doctor.
Well, no. Okay,
with
so
the doc.
I see initially, okay, your thing's dead. They're down the hall investigating your dead parents, essentially. But afterwards, when they remove the bodies and everything, is she still in this house? Like, is she still?
They let them stay in the house.
Correct.
So, but this is the thing. This is the thing. Is during the investigation, no, you're. As soon as I arrive on scene as the officer, as the supervisor in charge, whatever, my first thing is everybody get the fuck out of the house. The more people that are in the house for longer, the more your evidence disappears.
And it gets contaminated, distorted, everything.
Correct.
Like
100%.
So, Lizzie would be out of the house. If she really is feeling ill, well, guess what? Go to the fucking hospital. I will come meet you there and get your statement from the hospital. But that was their number one mistake. Number two was not trying to find blood on her.
Well, and along that point, since we're going there, they could not even tell what color dress she had on that day.
So
Okay.
there's no there's no field notes. There's no nothing.
No. Um, one stated it was a pink dress. One stated it was a blue dress. One stated it was a white dress. One stated I don't know. I just saw that she had an apron covering her dress, and I checked it, and I didn't see anything.
I sincerely doubt it.
Correct. So there was no. Um, well, we're leaning towards her as a possible suspect, and we need to make sure that there's like no blood splatter, no, all that kind of stuff on her person or on her clothes. So from the get go, the investigation that they did was clusterfuck.
I don't think they knew what they were doing. I mean, obviously it's obvious they didn't know what they were doing, but are we sure the actual police showed up and not just the guys in costumes?
Okay, so the other thing that they fucked up with, the number one thing is securing the scene.
Correct.
So crime scene tape goes up, blah 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 blah. Guess what? All of that still existed back then.
Yes.
Guess what they didn't do?
Tape it off.
They didn't secure the crime scene, as in people that were on looking were able to walk into the house and look.
Right.
People that were just walking by were going, oh, this is cool. I'm going to go in there and look and see what's happening.
To the point where they had the body covered and people would look at the couch and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, and they, while they're performing their search, one of the neighbors, who decides to be Mr. Looky-Loo, is looking through the back door, and they go, well, since you're standing here at the back door, you're now guarding the back door, make sure nobody comes in or out.
I'm really starting to doubt if the Falls River actually showed up.
Right?
So, and one of the other things too is Lizzie Borden from the get-go was the primary suspect.
Now, see, of all the thing that's going,
you just went dead.
We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties on my end. No, see, of all the things that have been going on right now with this investigation, that's the only part right now that I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that.
No,
literally,
I'm sorry, but it's wrong.
Initially, let me rephrase. Initially, okay, we got a suspect. Now start the investigation to eliminate her.
Here's the thing. When I say Lizzie Borden was the primary suspect, I mean Lizzie Borden was their only suspect.
Correct.
Lizzie Borden was the sole person that they were looking at, which means by looking only at Lizzie, you have blinders on. That means you're going to miss any crucial evidence leading you to other suspects, such as the uncle or anything like that. You are focusing on one person. Should you sit there and investigate that person? Sure. What we would do now is we would interview the person, we would interview the suspect, and then we would get an alibi. And again, I wanna kind of break these down because I'm sure most people watch crime shows and stuff like that. But alibi, of course, is what were you doing at the time that the crime occurred that saves you from being a suspect in the crime. So you're going to get their alibi. Then you are going to say, okay, sit tight, don't go anywhere. I'm then going to go, and nowadays you're getting online, you're making phone calls, you're checking this alibi. If it's a friend corroborating the alibi, okay, Well, now I need somebody else to corroborate because this is just a friend that is sticking up for them. So you were at a restaurant. All right, well, I'm going to go into the restaurant and see if they have
A receipt of your purchases.
exactly records, if they have
Did
you
the
on
waitress
camera,
remember you?
if they have you on camera, stuff like that. And then if that alibi checks out, boom, I'm done. I'm going to the next person. However,
It
if
should.
if I went straight for Lizzie Borden and I said you are my prime suspect, and because she even, I believe she even tried to say the uncle did it or hinted at
She
it.
she never came out and specifically said that it was the uncle. She said that she heard um, two or three undisclosed men of shady character come to the house early in the morning, 9ish, to discuss business with her father because they were upset over business dealings that he did.
And
And
boom, that's now my next primary suspect.
Correct.
exactly, and this is what, and that's what I meant. Like that's what I was getting at. Now, of course, Fall River, maybe Fall River Police. At this point, in investigation, I stand by my firm belief.
Well,
I really just don't think they showed up. I think it's just
and
a bunch of dudes.
let me give you a little bit more insight as to what their frame of mind was after this initial investigation, and they do a preliminary line of questioning, okay, before they do an official, okay, yeah, you're my suspect. They had already obtained an arrest warrant for Lizzie
Good God.
that was in the back pocket of the chief of police, but was not officially served on her during this time of questioning. She was also strategically surrounded, and Caleb would understand what I'm talking about. Not so much as, you know, in all points, but in enough key positions that you can't leave. And was never advised of her um, Miranda
Legal
rights,
rights.
what we
Well,
call our Miranda rights.
yeah, I
But
don't
yes,
know
right.
what in the late 1800s they would have, if anything, they would have said. I'm sure someone of Lizzie's social standing would have gotten that. So
Well, it
just
was
to also,
still common practice then for the DA, just what we would call the district attorney or the investigator for the magistrate, to inform you that, hey, you may want to have counsel for this because we're leaning towards this, and this. And it was
so
common practice then to do that.
also it should be noted that Fall River is, while at this point in time not a small town, it wasn't small. It was, I think it, unless I am mistaken, it's probably the third largest one, definitely under Boston, but I don't know if
Correct.
it was the size, if it was equal to or greater than Springfield, which
And
is
I
the state
believe
capital.
Boston is only 90 miles away,
Yeah, so
if I
this
remember
isn't.
correctly.
It's not a small town by like we're not talking 2,000 people, but this is. I gotta believe that if Lizzie gave an alibi, somebody, there's enough people who probably would have seen her, because she probably, she's not going down to 7-Eleven in some shady neighborhood.
Right.
But this also, again, this is a line of inquiry. You said with the shady business dealings, the husband. Nope. Where's the investigation on Andrew Borden? Now, I will grant you, um, depending on who the underworld is, underworld shady dealing. I would be very surprised to simply, if Andrew Borden is killed, then yeah, absolutely, okay. Well, hey, don't screw over the wrong people. But that's very unusual. They just go after her. But but did they do any investigation on Abby Borden? Like, did she have defensive wounds from anything. So it just appeared she was just taken by surprise.
The Fall River coroner stated that there were no defensive wounds, that the initial blow more than likely killed her, and then the other, I believe it was what, 16
Yeah,
blows
blows
to the head
were just excessive.
were basically excessive overkill.
So the reason I bring that up is because I can imagine an alternate scenario to Lizzie killing her parents, not Lizzie, is Andrew Borden has early morning meeting with some shady business partners he has that he may or may not have screwed over. Don't know. Either way, irrelevant. They hate him. They want to kill him. They take an axe to him and they kill him. To send a message to for that. Abby walks in on it. They chase her up the stairs and they kill her because someone just witnessed their crime. They didn't know Abby was upstairs or something. They just thought Andrew was home, and they kill her to shut her up.
Well, and the only problem with that is Maggie says, "Nope, no, nobody came to the house. I was outside cleaning the windows. I had clear sight into the house from the outside windows. I never saw any of them. The only one that had access to it was Lizzie." So Maggie's kind of playing both sides here. She kind of changes her story a couple times about the dress that Lizzie had on and then didn't have on, and then one minute Lizzie was in this part of the room, and the other minute Lizzie was in this other part of the room. Then she does admit to, yeah, she was out in the barn at the time of the attacks, and so we've got Lizzie supposedly making up stories. We've got Maggie making up stories. Unfortunately, the only two that legitimately know what happened can't say anything.
Exactly. I mean,
So.
I'm also from police tactics, just also surrounding her, putting the pressure, having the warrant on. I mean, somebody was chasing for a promotion or a headline at least.
We'll get to that part here in a second. So like when Amy was reading that part to me, I wanted her to like just go through and read different parts of the trial while we were driving around today, and that was one of the things that came up in the trial, was how a reasonable person, when they were surrounded by the amount of law enforcement that was present, would be of the mindset that they were not free to leave, and that any statements I make are not going to be voluntary statements.
I mean, yeah, it's all the exits are. We're gonna use blocked,
Correct.
just because I sincerely. I mean, honestly, it's 50-50. If Lizzie had tried to leave, like, sincerely, like, I'm leaving and just bolt for the door, would they have stopped her? Who knows?
Oh, 100%. I believe that they 100% would have. Hence, that's why they already had the arrest warrant in hand.
Yeah.
So that if she did not cooperate, then they would have said, "Okay, well, you know what? You're under arrest. Now it's formal." So, so they go and do this whole cursory thing and all that kind of stuff. They talk to Lizzie after she is up in the bedroom. Initially, she is given several medications, one of which is morphine, by the doctor, by Dr. Bowen, the family doctor, and sent upstairs. And he goes upstairs to follow her, to take care of her, but basically plays gatekeeper for the bedroom. And they do cooperate. They do allow them to go in. One officer says that he did a brief look over of Lizzie, didn't notice what dress she had on, didn't see any blood on her, did check the closet, um, but didn't see anything of significance. So the question was presented, well, what exactly were you looking for in the closet? Another suspect? Did you expect to see somebody there? Were you looking for the murder weapon? He goes, I couldn't tell you what I was looking for. I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Also, you're curious. You're just looking. You're looking to look. You're fishing. Basically, it almost sounds like he's fishing. He's looking for something to stick out and say evidence, clue.
Right.
I don't know. But at the same time, though, it's again, who the hell knows? I mean, this is very clearly not a professional force we're dealing with, which is interesting for a town this size. Even back then, I expect there to be, I don't know, a little more. I mean, for God's sakes, probably the gunslingers out west could have probably done a better investigative job.
Yeah, but remember, we're dealing with a man who, from all accounts, was not liked by the rest of the town.
Correct.
So why? So they're just gonna half-ass his investigation. He's dead. We don't have to deal with him anymore.
Right.
We're just gonna do this investigation to save face and say that we're not.
Say that we did it.
Yeah.
And it should also be noted that at this time, people don't like Lizzie either. She was not liked in the community.
I guess nobody really likes the Borden family, period.
No. Pretty much no. The only one that
once
really
the wife died
was Emma, because she was soft-spoken. What was that, Caleb?
Once the wife died, it kind of went downhill.
It did. It did. And that'll come up here in the preliminary hearing. So we have them doing or not doing a search of the room. Supposedly, police officers go down into the basement and find 2 hatchets, 2 axes, and a hatchet head with a broken handle. This whole part's going to be significant because one officer writes in his notes that he found the hatchets, the axes, and the what they labeled as the handleless hatchet, and he put them in a bag and gave them over to the chief of police, as in put all of them in the same bag. Okay. So and you being law enforcement, Caleb being law enforcement, being law enforcement, we all know that rule number 1, they're separated for obvious reasons. Cross-contamination, all that kind of stuff, chain of custody, blah, blah, blah. So
plus you don't know what's what.
Exactly. And you don't know which one is the murder weapon or any of these is the murder weapon. You don't know, but you're still going to treat them as such. So supposedly they were all put into like a basically a brown paper bag and put in there all together, and were taken to the chief for safekeeping. Another one says, excuse me, that I found the hatchets and I wrapped them in a piece of brown paper and I delivered them to the chief.
Everybody just wants to
right. A third one on trial testifies, well, I wrapped it in some old newspaper that was like 5x5, and I handed it to the chief for safekeeping. Then the physician or the coroner for the Falls River there says, well, I happened to be walking by at the time of this whole thing happening, so I helped with the investigation, and I found, hatchets, and I turned them over. And to add even more of a what the hell, they took the president of the bank.
Oh, why not?
Right. They took the president of the bank and had him search the basement.
Eh,
Right. So they retrieve
yes.
these hatchets and axes and whatnot. Yet, and they do notice now, legitimately, they do notice that one of them has a broken handle, and the break appears to be recent in comparison to the other um, items down there, and that particular axe head or hatchet head appeared to have been cleaned off and then um, coated with a substance that resembled like coal dust, but it was not the same type that was on the same sediment that was on the axes on the other ones. So,
So, question if this is something you've read. So, we've seen these hatchets and axes and stuff in the basement.
mhm.
That's my question. Is this a wood? Do they have a coal furnace or are they having
They
wood?
did. They did. They had a coal furnace.
Okay, so now that's a little odd. Now, to me, that's a little odd because again, but I don't know the layout of the house. It could be they have a fireplace that they're using in there. So, but that just seems an excessive amount of hatchets and axes in a house that doesn't even use wood.
Well, you
Yeah,
have to
but
understand.
you can use hatchets to break up the coal too.
Correct. You can use it to break up the coal.
I've never
They
really used coal, so I have no idea.
they also had, it was basically a farm that they were on. They slaughtered their own animals in the barn, etc. So they would be used for that as well. Um, and they also owned several other farms throughout Fall River.
Okay.
So the the argument was, well, those are being used not just here but in other locales. Um, the the bank president says, no, I'm the one that found them, and I turned them over to the chief of police. Now, when it comes time to the trial, and they're going, okay, well, which one was the murder weapon? Well, we suspect it was this one. Well, did you find the handle? Well, yeah, the handle was recovered. Well, can we see that handle and see what it looks like? We don't know where it is. Yeah, we don't know where it is. And then the chief goes as far as saying at the time of the trial, I can send officers back to the house to look for it if you want me to.
Oh, that's nice.
So just, like from the get-go, it was a shit show.
I mean,
So
it's almost comedically bad.
yeah,
Like my
yeah,
coppery is like it's numb from pain. Like I would say, oh, my brain hurt. No, my cop brain hurts. No, it's I've just been so desensitized to the stupidity and the flagrant just breaking of basic procedures. And I should also note in the 1890s, it seems like a long time ago. Like, oh, police departments were old. Most police departments, at least in New England, had very much been long established. Like 1890s, yes,
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
Midwest to Western places, minus California, some parts of California. Where the police departments, if you look at the history, these are when the police departments really start becoming very formal. The town marshal is gone. The sheriff is taking over just detainee operations. Towns, villages, and cities are forming legitimate police departments, and I don't know exactly when the Fall River Police was founded, but I know just from my time in New England, they were ahead of the curve. Just from my basic understanding. So again, I'm not seeing like the most basic of police procedures. We all know you don't even need to really be there. Secure the crime scene. Make sure nobody can walk in. You know, nobody's expecting freaking CSI Fall River, but at the
Right.
same time, I'm pretty sure Caleb, correct me if I'm wrong. If I missed, did I miss the part in Security Forces Academy where we allow the president of your local bank to do the crime scene investigation with you?
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
Um, and Fall River Police Department was founded in 1854.
So so in theory we've got at least 40 years of experience on there,
Yeah.
plus whatever institution was there beforehand that presumably did some kind of investigation. But again, basic police, where is it? Don't see it. This is why I keep saying the maybe Fall River Police in this situation, because I'm really genuinely, unless I go back in time and physically see the cops there, I can't believe they're actually there, because this is I would almost say, were they trying to throw the investigation? I understand going through the motions, but at the same time it's like,
Well,
what are you doing?
I mean, if we look at it though, again, the Fall River Police Department was formed in 1854. This is late 1800s. So they've only been around for 40 years. It it's pretty new. There's stuff that we're still learning now at over 1,000 years or
Well, yeah, like I said,
whatever. But
I'm not expecting CSI. Like I wasn't expecting to find DNA. I'm not expecting
Oh,
fingerprints, even.
but here's the significance to where you're going at with this, Ben. They had enough foresight that when they did look at the hatchet with a broken handle, they noticed, quote unquote, two dark hairs, possibly human in nature. Said hairs were sent to Harvard for analysis. It came back during the trial that it wasn't two, that only one was sent. They never did get two hairs. They only got one hair, and that hair ended up being bovine in nature and not human in nature.
but it also needs to be noted that all of those weapons
Mm-hmm.
were never removed from the house.
Initially, correct. Initially, it was not until just before the trial, after they had arrested her, that they go and remove all of those items from the house,
Let's
and never did recover the handle.
let's talk about this autopsy that was done on the kitchen table.
Yeah, so
Oh, I'm
um,
gonna be sick, and you know me. It doesn't
The
take a lot.
the autopsies were done on the kitchen fucking table
correct. They were
at the Borden house.
at the Borden house. They were done at the kitchen table. They brought in the mortician's slab, you know, to put the bodies on. They removed the stomach contents of both Abby and Andrew, and those were bottled up for um, investigation and whatnot to determine if the family had been poisoned, as Lizzie had stated previously.
They're poison, but someone just decided.
Well, and it obviously should be noted that it came back negative.
Correct. It came back negative. They also took milk, the family's milk, because it was suspected that it was in that.
Because
They
it was the milk was
also,
left out on the counter.
right. They had also taken some of the mutton and things of that nature and sent all those to Harvard for analysis as well. It all came back that there was no poison. Um, and part of that was done because Lizzie was suspected of trying to purchase a hydrocyanic acid.
Hydrocyanic, yes.
Hydrocyanic acid
What is
in
that?
a diluted form.
So,
Never heard hydrocyanic.
so hydrocyanic acid, it's also called prussic acid. Basically, it's a extremely poisonous and flammable liquid that boils above room temperature. It's basically it's hydrogen and cyanide put together. So it is cyanide in water form because we know there are
It's a powder.
yeah. So
I've always seen
Yes.
yeah. So this is in liquid form.
Okay.
Right. Now, Lizzie claimed that she tried to get this acid to clean pelts that she had. The pharmacist would not sell it to her because she did not have a prescription. So somebody does the right thing. No, I'm not going to sell it to you because this is just hanky. Something's not right. You don't have a prescription for this.
And then it should be noted that the coroner basically called bullshit on this because it has no antiseptic properties, which means it would not would not have done anything for the furs.
Correct.
That was going to be my next question. Is this used for
No,
that?
no. So you would have used something antiseptic to get rid of any of the like something like bleach or something a little less. I mean, actually, depending on the fur, you could use bleach because it wouldn't bleed. It wouldn't go through the fur. But you're basically removing any of the diseases, any of the nasty shit that comes from skinning the animal, plus any of the remaining like sinew and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay. So, but definitely this hydro.
No, it had no antiseptic properties. It was poison in liquid form.
It was legit poison. So that spurred the autopsy, and that bullshit call came out in the trial. Well, was it possible that she was trying to buy it for antiseptic reasons? And he said, no, definitely not. It has no antiseptic properties at all. Hence why I did, the autopsy. Did the autopsy and hearing from the neighbors that she tried to buy this. So, and then I know we touched on it briefly. So they do the autopsy in the dining room, okay, in the Borden dining room. That's all done. They secure basically what they need to secure. The Lizzie and Emma go off to have the funeral. The bodies of mom and dad are being transported to the cemetery to have the service and be buried. The police put the ixnay on it. Stop. No. You can't have those bodies.
Now, here's my question: can they do that?
Yeah.
Like, I know they can. I know the house is a crime scene, but could they actually?
Yes, they. So it really depends on. Really, it depends on what your warrant states. If your warrant states that you need access to the bodies and you are actively investigating the bodies still, which really they had their pictures. They tested the contents of the stomach. They really didn't need the bodies anymore.
No. And along that note, in number one, an autopsy is not going to be done on the dining room table.
That would get thrown out in court.
Right. And number two, you are not going to release said bodies until your whole investigation is done.
Correct.
So the fact that they released the bodies back to the family for burial and then decided, whoa, we're not done with the bodies, that was a little hinky. So Here they turn around and they get the bodies for the sole purpose of removing the head of mom and dad. And the county coroner then takes the heads home, and
Oh,
Caleb takes them home. Okay, and Caleb, this is up your alley. Uses lobster pots to boil the heads to remove the skin from the skulls, so he can look at the skulls and make plaster molds of them and such for future reference.
Okay, so
oh my god. First of all, okay, first pressing question, Caleb, what are you doing with lobster pots
no,
that
it's
you would? I want to know.
so this is the thing. So again, this is the late 18. Number one, chain of custody is a big thing.
Right.
Throughout this whole thing, we see bad chain of custody. Taking them home is a no-go. You have a lab there. You need to utilize that. Now, there are multiple ways. Now, keep in mind that this is the late 1800s. The ways that I'm talking about now have evolved since then. There are different ways to remove skin for autopsies. You have maceration. That basically you soak the bones in water, usually warm or hot, to allow the soft tissues to decompose and separate from the bone over time. It takes a little bit longer. One that a lot of people like because it's clean is using domestic beetles.
Correct.
So they basically put a colony of domestic beetles in, which feed on the flesh, leaving the bones behind. If anybody has ever watched the show Bones, you see Bones use that all the time.
Love that.
Bones was a pretty accurate show when it comes to forensics.
Yeah.
Forensics, because they got people to work with them. The other thing is chemical decomp. Usually, it's some type of safe acid that will remove the skin but keep the bone. But so what he is doing here is maceration. That was the first form to ever be done. So boiling it, removing. If you think about when you're cooking, and let's say I'm slow cooking a pork that is bone in, or even smoking it, that heat is slowly dissolving the tissue away from the bone, which then makes it fall off the bone. It's the same thing. He's
Now
just
I want ham.
he's just doing it with human heads. So think about that when you want ham.
Right.
Um,
The next time you go to smoke that roast there, buddy.
I mean, I'll watch the Curious movie while I'll be eating chicken Alfredo.
and think of Lizzie Borden.
So,
Yes.
yeah, I've literally watched the movie Event Horizon. For any of our fans out there who know this movie, it is a great space horror film, and it is gory as hell. And I remember as a kid watching it. Me, my mom, and dad would watch it because we're all horror fans, and we're eating dinner. We're in the living room, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't eat," and I'm just like, "Ah, damn, it's cleared them like a fish." Hey, more there. I'll eat right. I gory stuff don't turn.
But yeah.
Although I do, I really hope this doctor remember to rinse out the lobster pot.
Probably not.
He made. But it sounds like, despite the fact that this is a no-go to take this home with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's chain of custody.
It does sound like this
practice.
This isn't right, but it does sound like the methodology of trying to find it does seem like it actually a pretty sound thing. Like, okay, let's see what happened here.
Sure. I mean, the means in which he did it, yes.
No,
100%. But not doing it at the house.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we'll we'll jump to the inquest here, and this is where the whole morphine thing becomes key. Lizzie appeared at the inquest hearing on August 8th. Her request to have her family attorney present was refused under state statute, providing that an inquest must be held in private. She had been prescribed regular doses of morphine to calm her nerves, and it is supposedly it's possible that her testimony was affected by this. Now, it did come out in the trial under oath that at the time of the inquest she was under the influence of morphine, and everyone within that inquest hearing was aware of that fact. Um, Lizzie's behavior was erratic, and she often refused to answer a question, even if the answer would be beneficial to her. She often contradicted herself and provided alternating accounts of the morning in question, such as saying she was in the kitchen reading a magazine when her father arrived home, then saying she was in the dining room doing some ironing, then saying she was coming down the stairs. Now, the district attorney jumps on this. He gets very aggressive and confrontational. And on August 11th, he serves her with a warrant of arrest and throws her in jail. The inquest testimony becomes the basis for the big debate, the modern debate now, regarding her guilt or innocence. That whole account was ruled inadmissible at her trial in June of 1893. And then various newspaper articles noted that Lizzie possessed a stolid misdemeanor and bit her lips, flushed, and bent toward Attorney Adams. It was also reported that the testimony provided in the inquest had, quote, caused a change of opinion among her friends who have heretofore strongly maintained her innocence. The inquest received significant press attention nationwide, including an extensive 3-page write-up in the Boston Globe. A grand jury began hearing evidence on November 7th, and Borden was indicted on December 2nd. So, in regards to the whole morphine thing, it comes out later in the trial that she was under the influence, and that was the reason for her being all over the place in her testimony and in her questioning. And in regards to her legal counsel not being allowed as a result of that state statute was found to be not pertinent. That she was to have legal counsel present at the time, and they denied her that.
Oh, we're just down.
Oh, it's about to get worse.
Oh yeah. So, Lizzie's trial took place in New Bedford starting on June 5th, 1893. Prosecuting attorneys were Hosea M. Knowlton and future U.S. Supreme Court Justice William H. Moody. Defending were Andrew V. Jennings, Melvin O. Adams, and former Massachusetts Governor George D. Robinson. And
As
Robinson,
defense?
Yes.
as her defense. Now, and everything that we read in regards to this whole trial, she basically had the trifecta for the defense team. Caleb, who's the big defense attorney for the Stars? I can't think what his name is.
Johnny Cochran.
Yes, Johnny Cochran.
Yeah.
Basically, this team would be the Johnny Cochran of that era. And what made it so significant with having Robinson there, he was known to be very smooth, very debonair. He had a very calm speaking tone, and he was found to be very, very persuasive in and to the point where he would basically lure you into a conversation about something that you didn't necessarily want to talk about until he got to the point that he wanted, and then he would just clamp down.
Well,
So,
and then let's also note that the most significant part of him being a part of the defense is that he is the one that got one of the judges on their seat.
correct. Correct. Yeah.
The residing
So,
judge is only there because of him.
correct.
He appointed
So,
him as a judge.
yeah, kind of interesting in the choices that she has for defense attorneys. So, 5 days before the trial's commencement on June 1st, another axe murder occurred in Fall River. This time, the victim was Bertha Manchester, who was found hacked to death in her kitchen. The similarities between the Manchester and Borden murders were striking and were also noted by jurors. However, Jose Carreira de Mayo, a Portuguese immigrant, was later convicted of Manchester's murder in 1894 and was determined not to have been in the vicinity of Fall River at the time of the Borden murders.
Money speaks, though.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if Lizzie paid somebody to commit another murder to help get her off.
Well,
Could have.
could have. A lot of speculation out there.
Or I mean, it's also the fact that so nowadays this would be looked at as a very big coincidence. I mean, now we don't really believe in a coincidence, but because everything is held so close to the vest now. However, back then, everybody could just walk in the fucking house and see the murders. So this man could have been one of the people that walk inside, saw the murders, and went, "Huh, I'm gonna kill like that."
Right.
Maybe I'll get away with it because they'll think it's her. So,
Yeah. So, let's see. Well, one of the prominent points of discussion in the trial was the hatchet head, which was found in the basement. Unfortunately, the prosecution was not able to convince the jury that this was the murder weapon. The prosecutors argued that the killer had removed the handle because it would have been covered in blood. One officer testified that a hatchet handle was found near the hatchet head, but another one contradicted it. They eventually did find the handle with no blood, blah, blah, blah. Now, no bloody clothing was found at the scene. Russell testified that on August 8th, 1892, she had witnessed Lizzie burn a dress in the kitchen stove, saying that it had been ruined when she brushed against wet paint. During the course of the trial, defense never attempted to challenge the statement, nor did the prosecution or the police press the issue as to what was it that you were painting that you brushed against. So, and no other dresses were recovered.
I mean, from the police.
you're
Even
cutting in and out, dude.
Oh, sorry about that. I thought I hit the unmute. I mean, if we're gonna go off the police matter, was she even wearing clothes? Because nobody seems to determine what she was wearing.
Well, one says that she was initially wearing a blue dress and then she changed into like a pink house coat kind of thing. Another said no, that she had a pink dress on. One said that she had a white dress on, so nobody really knows for sure.
I think they're making that up at this point because, given looking at the photos of there's going to be blood everywhere. Going to be on Lizzie if she's or the murderer. We'll just say the murderer for that. So, I mean, probably she either had to make a very hasty change of clothes or they just weren't looking. And then when they went back to like, hey,
I
what
hit
did you
send.
see you wearing?
I did. So give me a second.
Oh, this is. I'm actually shocked the trial even got to this point. I mean, really, any judge we know today would have looked at that and been like, "Yeah, it's just a. I'm not even gonna let you into the front door of the courtroom." So I mean, morphined up during an investigation, denied counsel during an inquest, chain of evidence lost. I mean, what made I would really, Kayla, what do you think would make the prosecutor go even try to take this to trial? I mean, it seems like this was doomed to fail to begin with. Even if Lizzie was actually the murderer, there's no proof that she actually really did it.
I, to be honest, I don't think that they knew that they could win. I think it was just going through the motions to say that they did it, and whatever happened happened.
Yeah.
So,
I think that some of it too was the distaste for Lizzie Borden, because she was so vocal. She was not a typical female of that era and that time. She was very independent and strong-willed, and was not liked in the community for that. So I think that part of it was this was a way to shut her up and put her in her place. And one of the things that I found interesting when we were talking about the whole police force, after Lizzie's arrest, every officer involved in the investigation and the arrest was promoted to captain.
Really,
Yeah.
that's a lot of captains.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I am presuming is not a very big police department.
I'm not sure what the numbers were at that time, but I know that six officers were promoted to captain after her arrest.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I would, you know what? I can't get past this, what Lizzie said about the shady business characters. So, I mean, it just seems like an odd story just to make up on the fly. They,
Right. Right.
so I can't help but wonder if Andrew Gordon did have some kind of sketchy connections that he made with his businesses. And I would be very interested if, I mean, granted, also, I would love to see the records of the police at that time to see if they had any other investigations. But I mean, given the state of this investigation, I wouldn't be surprised if it's all finger paints and doodles and stuff.
Well, and realistically, we could do a whole nother session just on the trial and all that kind of stuff and a breakdown of each person. But that was one of the things that the defense planted in the minds of the jury. And all the jurors were male, younger male, 30s, and all of them had daughters. So that was interesting as well. And at some point, somebody presented that whole scenario. Well, what about these questionable characters? Could they even get into the house? Because the prosecution was like, well, the Bordens had the house locked down so tight nobody could gain access, and the defense attorneys had one of the night watchmen climb onto the balcony from the outside street and gain access to the house.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible this could very well have been a hit, like Andrew Gordon screwed over somebody. Hatchet Man, literally, goes in to eliminate Andrew Gordon. He sees that Abby is there. He can't get past her without making his presence known, so he ambushes her and kills her. This could be, I mean, Hitman doesn't really care who he kills. Takes care of Abby. And then he goes down and he killed Andrew, and um, and then he's able to make another egress out wherever, and make sure that he's not seen, and that's it. That's probably the end. That could very well be the end of it. I would think that's a very plausible theory. It would, I probably, if the Fall River Police had been a real police at this point, they probably should have investigated.
Right. Well, I mean, unfortunately, we'll never know. You know, and it should be noted that Lizzie ended up getting acquitted on, I believe it was June 20th of 1893. The justices, the presiding justices at the time, they deliberated for about an hour and a half before acquitting her, citing that the um, testimony that she gave at the Inquisition was not admissible, and that was pretty much what the prosecution was hanging their hat on. So once that was thrown out and they weren't able to use that, they really didn't have anything. Then they tried to really piece the details together in regards to the acts, but they had fucked that up so bad. It was just such a debacle that the defense just ran all over it and shot it down. So, Lizzie ends up getting acquitted of it. And one of the best things that her defense team ever did was keep her from getting on the stand.
Oh yeah, yeah. She, you never. What would be the point?
Right.
I mean, really, literally, they have nothing there. Once that inquest, which should never. I mean, personally speaking, I don't think it should have ever gone to trial. Period. But once that inquest was thoroughly sank, yeah, why would you speak? So
Right.
I mean, it didn't do any matter. They didn't need to speak Lizzie. All she would have. I mean, it's not like, given her personality, I doubt she was going to have an emotional breakdown and confess on the stand. But at the same time, it wouldn't have helped her any which way.
No, and there was really no need to have her testify at that point. So, um, you know, Lizzie ends up getting acquitted, but in the eyes of the town and the public, she's still suspect number one. Everybody feels that she killed her father and stepfather. Um, some think that it was out of um, anger because of the business deals, that there was an argument about the way the inheritance is being given off and all that kind of stuff. Some claim that she was sexually assaulted by her father, but that wasn't proven. Others felt that she was caught in a romantic lesbian twist, and that Abby found out and was going to make it known to the father and all that kind of stuff. But
A lot of theories, and they all seem to pop up after the fact, nothing before.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, so we may never know the truth. I mean, people still look into this now, but unfortunately, the way evidence was handled, there would be no way for us to go back and use modern technology to examine the evidence. Um, Unlike stuff like Jack the Ripper, which we will get into, they recently, about what, 10, 15 years ago, did DNA tests on what they believe to be a jacket of Jack the Ripper's, and found familial matches and things like that. Um, but yeah, so it's all the chain of evidence things. If it had been done well, then we probably could have figured it out and posthumously charged Lizzie with something, if it was her. So,
I mean, I'm sure we're gonna have our final thoughts, but just my opinion. I mean, and again, this, in spite of everything, that all the alternate theories, I still kind of think she did it. I just don't think they ever found out how she did it. I think they gave her too much time to ditch the evidence. I think she probably planned this out fairly well, and and she just got really, really lucky in the fact that police were just so inept, or whatever their motivations were, they were just so inept in their investigation that she was never in any danger of, getting really arrested, facing the hangman's noose or anything. I mean, for God's sake, they let her stay in the home after the investigation.
Yeah.
She could literally wake up in the middle of the night
Yeah.
and get rid of the murder weapon wherever she put it. She could literally get rid of it, and that's it. That means a case like this boils down to motive. Who's got the most motive? We can talk about, yes, Andrew Borden may or may not have had shady dealings or this, but the big glaring person who has the motivation to kill her father and kill her stepmother is Lizzie.
Sure.
So, but like I said, though, there's no evidence of it. So this is just my opinion, simply because it's the most direct. This really reads like a premeditated crime of passion. This is what this reads to.
But yeah, so that concludes Lizzie Borden. I mean, there's not much more to go into. I mean, we could go into her later in life, but basically, she died in 1927. Her gallbladder was removed, and she got pneumonia, and she died. And then her sister Emma died from chronic nephritis in a nursing home in New Hampshire. But yeah, so they were buried in the family plot at Oak Grove Cemetery, and at her time of death, she was worth $5.6 million. Well, $250,000 then, but it equates to $5.6 million now. So, but yeah. So we are going to be venturing into a few other things. I know Ben has one thing that he's doing next week, and then we are going to start I'm going to call it a treasure trail of series. So we're going to start with one topic that coincidentally has to do with another topic that will lead us into another one, that will lead us into another one and another one. It's going to be very interesting. I cannot wait, because it's going across the board. So it's going to go from serial killers to haunted places to ghosts to disappearance cases and this and that. So it'll be very interesting in this series that we'll all touch on. But yeah, so please, we want to say thank you for visiting the Scarlet Tavern. Please remember to turn in your glasses, push in your seat, and as always, tip the bard. Good night, everybody.
Good night.